How can Americans afford to survive in today's economy? The cost of everything is going through the roof, and wages are stagnating amid rampant inflation. Today, the median household income is a little over $65,000 a year, which means that the average family earns around $5,400 a month. But before any of that money gets spent, you have to take out at least $1,100 in taxes. That leaves about $4,300 a month to pay all the bills. So, if you have to pay the mortgage or rent, at least another $1,100 goes away, which means that now you have $3,200 to make your car payments, your student loan payments, your energy bills, water bills, phone bills, cable bills, internet bills, health insurance, home insurance, and, most importantly, you have to provide 3 good meals a day for every member of your family. And, of course, the cars need to be filled up with gas, or you won't go anywhere. On top of that, there are always extra expenses, home or car repairs, new clothes, shoes for your kids. With all things considered, it's understandable why so many families are struggling financially. Workers are facing immense hardships as labor conditions continue to decay. The number of good jobs is steadily dropping. Most positions do not support middle-class lifestyles anymore. Meanwhile, millions of families are seeing their purchasing power getting squeezed harder and harder with each passing month as the cost of living just keeps going up. To make things worse, as supply chains collapse, global tensions rise, markets react, and the economy falls back into recession, the American family is going to have an even more difficult time trying to survive financially in the coming months. In today's video, we have compiled 30 facts that prove that the average American family is getting absolutely pulverized by this economy. But before checking out this list, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next list. Number 1. The cost of health insurance policy for the average American family surged from $9,733 a decade ago to $15,754 in 2020. That's according to the international health insurance provider William Russell. However, in 2021, that figure rose from $15,754 to $21,342, and another 5% increase is expected to occur this year. How in the world can most families afford that? Even though some employers may pay for a portion of that sum, it is still outrageous. 2. Given the higher costs for insurance, many employers are just getting rid of health plans for their employees. In fact, last year, 44% of firms did not offer insurance to their workers, and the percentage of Americans covered by employer-based health plans has fallen for 22 years in a row. 3. William Russell's researchers found that in a lifetime, the typical American individual would spend more than $400,000 on health care. But over 2/3 of the entire population don't have or will not have all the cover they need to finance this during their lives. 4. At this point, most American families are financially struggling. According to the Conference Board, consumer confidence and spending are both down this year as inflation fears continue to rise. 5. At the same time, labor conditions continue to deteriorate. Oxfam America reported this week that 1 in 3 U.S. workers makes less than $15 an hour. 6. Even if you have a middle-class job, that doesn't mean that you're doing much more than surviving. A Vox study reported that middle-class families spend over 60% of their yearly incomes to afford everyday expenses, with about 35.5% of that sum just to pay for housing. 7. The amount of debt that the average American family is carrying is absolutely staggering. The median yearly wage in the United States is around $34,248, while the ordinary American household carries on an average of $115,622 in debt. 8. Americans are making huge efforts to keep up with raging prices. The Consumer Price Index for durable goods jumped by 18.7% last month, while non-durable goods surged 10.7%, Wall Street reports. Meanwhile, when adjusted for inflation, wages dropped by 3.6%, which means consumers are making heroic efforts to earn and to borrow money to keep up with inflation. 9. Almost every recent survey shows that the American people are experiencing financial hardships right now. A survey conducted by Morning Consult on behalf of Prudential Financial found that nearly half, or about 46% of Americans, described themselves as financially struggling. 10. A study released by CNBC showed that most U.S. consumers are seriously starting to cut back on spending again, with 88% of respondents revealing worries about the soaring cost of living. 11. It certainly does not help that millions of middle-class jobs have been shipped overseas. Sadly, the trend of offshoring our jobs has considerably accelerated over the past 10 years, and according to one estimate shared by Professor Alan Blinder of Princeton University, approximately 40 million middle-class jobs have been lost. Now, over 60% of jobs in America do not support middle-class life. 12. There is a lot of discontentment in the labor market right now. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 4.5 million Americans have voluntarily left their jobs in a phenomenon known as the Great Resignation. 13. Today, 52% of American adults between the ages of 25 and 34 are living with their parents. That accounts for approximately 26.6 million people. The trend is putting an even greater strain on the budgets of millions of families. 14. American families have gotten very accustomed to using credit cards to pay for things. Today, 45.4% of families carry some sort of credit card debt. In total, Americans owe $807 billion across almost 506 million card accounts, as reported by LendingTree.com. 15. Many American families are not making it at all in this economy. In 2020, 8 million Americans fell into poverty amid the health crisis. In 2021, an additional 3.3 million people started living in poverty. These were the largest increases in poverty numbers seen since the U.S. government began keeping statistics back in 1959. 16. Living on food stamps has become a way of life for a vast portion of the U.S. population. There are currently more than 42 million Americans that need food stamps to have enough to eat every month. Almost every single month, that rate reaches a new record high. 17. The average price of a gallon of gasoline in the United States is now $4.31, while the average price for diesel is currently $5.13. Both are at all-time highs. 18. Gas prices have gotten so absurd that many Americans are stealing gas right now. According to the AAA, gas theft has risen so rapidly over the past 2 weeks, it's pushed the national rate of offenses up by almost 6 percentage points. However, official figures specifically about gas theft have not been released yet. 19. The number of low-income jobs in the U.S. has risen steadily over the past 30 years. They now account for almost half, or 44% of all jobs in the United States. 20. U.S. consumers spend $1.2 trillion a year on energy, which accounts for 5.7% of all consumer spending. When spread over the population, annual costs for a family of 4 surpass $15,000. 21. A decade ago, the average American driver would spend somewhere around $2,247 a year for gasoline. In 2022, drivers are going to spend nearly $3,332 to fill up their tanks. Unfortunately, it seems likely that the price of oil is going to go up even higher, which means that figure can still surge in the coming months. 22. Unfortunately, it looks like millions of families could soon be in danger of losing their homes. According to the Mortgage Bankers Association, at least 8 million Americans are still behind on their mortgage payments. 23. In 1978, the average annual cost of college tuition for public institutions was $243, while for private institutions it was $1,011. Last year, the cost of college tuition for public institutions hit $9,349, and for private institutions, a staggering $32,769, as reported by the Education Data Initiative. 24. According to a study conducted by ExtremeInequality.org over the past 10 years, today, the poorest 50% of American workers collectively own less than 2.5% of all the wealth in the United States. 25. On the other hand, the wealthiest 1% own over 50% of all the stocks and bonds being traded right now. 26. An analysis released by the Economic Policy Institute found that the average CEO made 351 times more money than the average American worker did last year. 27. The analysis also found that real average hourly earnings, when adjusted for inflation, have not increased in 50 years. That's half a century. 28. Meanwhile, CEO compensation rose 940% over the past 50 years. 29. And savings rates have sunk as Americans borrow money to keep up with soaring living expenses. Motley Fool data showed that the U.S. consumer savings rate dropped to the lowest level since 2013. 30. If you aren't in the top 1% of America's earners, well, you're pretty much screwed. Last year alone, the wealthy made more money than the whole middle class, while the bottom 90% have seen their incomes being eaten away by inflation. Most people in the United States are living in an almost constant state of financial despair right now. Parents are spending sleepless nights wondering how they're going to explain to their children that they cannot provide for the same things they used to, or how they're going to stay above water for another month. In modern-day America, if you can keep yourself from getting evicted by your landlord or prevent your home from being foreclosed, and if you're able to put food on the table every day and put clothes on the backs of your children, then you're extremely lucky, because there are millions out there that do not have the conditions to do so. You know, this once was a nation for the great, but now the American dream has turned into a horrifying nightmare. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it informative. We look forward to your comments underneath. Please subscribe to our channel.